name is Father Pete Sotiris. I'm the pastor here at St. Basil's Orthodox Church, and it is a joy to have you all here. And please spread the word on this series, because part of the purpose of having this is to just expose people to this wonderful speaker, George, and to help people. Because, Christianity is all about not just the soul, it's about the whole person. The church I can only speak from my tradition, but I'm sure other churches say the same thing, that God just doesn't care about the spirit, He cares about the entire person, and our lives, and our real lives, and our daily lives, and our relationships. And so Christ came to bring us peace in this life, and to give us a foretaste of His kingdom in this life, and to help us in this life, not just in the life to come. And so this is what this series, one of the things this series is all about. And so George is going to begin with this topic, getting love right. He'll speak more to that, but it is indeed an honor and a privilege to have George here with us. You'll see his bio if you haven't already. He's a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice in Pleasant, California. Has been helping families, couples, and children over the past 30 years. And is also the director of the Family Wellness Ministry of the Greek Orthodox Metropolis of San Francisco. So, again, and he's a sought-after speaker. And so I'm just delighted to have him with us. And I know you're going to get much from it. So, without further ado, please welcome George Papageorge.
Excellent. Great to be here. Great to be back here, too. Who was here when I spoke the last time? My people are here. Thank you, my groupies. I love seeing you again. And definitely, it's almost a simple topic of getting love right, but I almost want us to make sure we stay simple, because the alternative is getting love wrong. And I think we could say, and something I told my son, he's 17 now, and around 15 he was noticing, and he plays a lot of competitive sports, and the girls were all making a play on him, that Greek mystique and all that kind of stuff, and he was just noticing life getting hectic. And he's saying, well, how am I not gonna fall into all those temptations? And sometimes in sports, he was saying, I just see the ugliness in people, like dads, moms, kids, and he was feeling the stress at 15. And one of the things I told him, and it just this Bible verse jumped out of me, I said, well, it's interesting you say that, because I said, Jesus says to be in the world. If we want to be in reality, we have to be in the world. But Jesus goes on to say, but don't be of the world. So the world is all into love, but we're interested in getting love right. And if there's something basic, and Father kind of spoke to it in church, kind of the gospel, Greek for good news, the good news of Christ's message is He came to help us to get love right. And I think that if we get love right, we get God right. When we get God right, we get love right. Okay? So, and in fact, we could even take a peek and say, our talk and our discussions, and hopefully our brains get stimulated, our hearts get stimulated on some important things, but in a way we're hoping to find where psychology and theology are meant to intersect. And then if you ever meet anybody into psychology that is allergic to theology, that's revealing. If you meet someone into theology that's allergic to psychology, that's revealing. And I believe we can truly find truth because it's true. And there's truth, and we'll reflect on a little bit tonight, that comes from traditions of psychology and of theology. So we're interested in getting love right. Now, I would say also, if there's ever been a distinct time in your life when you kind of started noticing that you were getting love wrong, that's a memorable time. that's usually a marker. There's usually symptoms that go with getting love wrong. Like, so if you go with me there a little bit, like, we're interested in kind of finding the path tonight, next week, through the month, and as we get, discuss things more, of kind of getting the feel, the vibe of, yeah, this is what it means to get love right. Now, what's nice is you guys can be here tonight and say some prayers, have a meal, celebrate some birthdays. In a sense, that would be some symptoms of getting love right. Because there's some connection that goes on, and then there's some community that goes on, and those would be good signs of getting love right. What would come to mind for you guys that would be symptomatic of when we're getting love wrong? What would come to mind for you guys? What's that? Indifference, like what's the point? Why show up to something? Or I don't care what you're going through. Maybe apathy. What else? What's that?
Codependence.
Okay, codependence. So
Needing to be part of it even if you can't help.
okay, so if we're getting love wrong, then we're needing to be an extension of something, and maybe we don't have a clear sense of who we are, and then we become dependent on something or someone, almost like life support system on someone else. We might even say that, even the classic mainstream addiction might even be people-pleasing. Something as simple as people-pleasing, many of us fall into that.
Trying too hard.
Okay, trying too hard, right? So you feel like maybe I'm carrying the load for both people in the relationship. And so usually there is kind of a grind. Usually there is a fatigue. Very often there can be kind of this should be working, but somewhere inside we know it's not working quite right. So just the idea, I want us to have the mindfulness, a little bit of clarity we're interested in together we could be reflecting on what's it look like when we get love right. So, my day job is a marriage family therapist. So I did want to show you a clip, if we can make this work. This should work because the audio portion should work. I always get nervous on all this audio stuff, but I want us to take a look at this one quick little clip from a therapy session. And I want you to get a feel for what's going on in therapy. Are they getting it right? What are they getting right in this therapy session? What might they be getting wrong? Pay attention. Notice what you feel about this session. And tell me what you notice. So I'm going to see if we can make this work.
Dr. Spitzer?
Yes, come in. I just was washing my hands.
I'm Catherine Bigman. Janet Carlisle referred me.
Oh, yes. You're the loving.
Yes, that's me. Should I lay down?
Oh, no. Just have two things. Let me tell you a bit about our billing. I charge $5 for the first 5 minutes. And then absolutely nothing after that. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Too good to be true, as a matter of fact.
Well, I can almost guarantee you that our session won't last for 5 minutes. Now, we don't do any insurance billing, so we either have to pay in cash or by check.
Wow, okay.
And I don't make change.
All right.
Go.
Go.
Well, tell me about the problem that you wish to address.
Okay, well, I have this fear of being buried alive in a box. I start thinking about being buried alive and I begin to panic.
Has anyone ever tried to bury you alive in a box?
No, but truly thinking about it does make my life horrible. I mean, I can't go through tunnels or be in an elevator or in a house, anything boxy.
So what you're saying is you're claustrophobic.
Yes, that's it.
All right, well, let's go, Catherine. I'm going to say 2 words to you right now. I want you to listen to them very, very carefully. then I want you to take them out of the office with you and incorporate them into your life.
So write them down?
Well, if it makes you comfortable, it's just you. Most people can remember them.
Okay.
Ready?
Yes.
Okay, here, there. Stop it!
Stop it?
Yes, S-T-O-P, new word, I-T.
So what are you saying?
You know, it's funny. I say two simple words, and I cannot tell you the amount of people who say exactly the same thing you're saying. I mean, this is not Yiddish, Catherine. This is it. Stop it.
So I should just stop it.
There you go. I mean, you don't want to go through life being scared of being buried alive in a box, do you? I mean, that sounds frightening.
I can't. I mean, it's been with me since childhood.
No, we don't go there. Just stop.
So I should just stop being afraid of being buried alive in a box.
You got it. Good. Well, it's only been 3 minutes, so that will be $3.
Actually, I only have 5, so
No, I don't have change.
then I guess I'll take the full 5 minutes.
Fine. All right. What other problems would you like to address?
I'm bulimic. I stick my fingers down my throat.
Stop it. Don't do that.
But I'm compelled to. My mom used to call me fat.
No. We don't go there.
But I've been housed.
Not there either.
But my horoscope did say.
We definitely don't go there. What else?
Well, I have self-destructive relationships with men.
Stop it! You want to be with a man, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, then stop it. Don't be stupid. Big baby.
I wash my hands a lot.
That's all right. I wash my hands all the time. There's a lot of germs. Yeah, don't worry about that.
I'm afraid to drive.
Well, stop it! How are you going to get around? Get in the car and drive, you kook.
You stop it!
What's the problem, Kathy?
I don't like this. I don't like this therapy at all. You're just telling me to stop it.
And you don't like them?
No, I don't.
So you think we're moving too fast?
Yes. Yes, I do.
All right, then let me give you 10 words that I think will clear everything up for you. You want to get a pad and pencil for each one? Are you ready? Right here are the 10 words. Stop it or I'll bury you alive in a box!
Okay, welcome to therapy, you guys. So, give me your impression. Obviously, kind of comical, to say the least. But give me your impressions, though, even though it's like a comedy, what went wrong? If we're trying to get love right or not want to get it wrong, here we see a little bit of therapy. What went wrong? What stands out as like a deal breaker for you in that therapy session?
Saying stop it.
What's that?
Saying stop it.
Say stop it, okay.
And yelling.
Yelling. What else?
She was fearful.
She was fearful, and how did his therapy, what does therapy do with that?
sympathetic.
Okay, no, not sympathetic at all, so no empathy. Okay. He didn't listen, right? What else?
All their names.
Okay, called her names, yeah. So name calling, yeah.
Both threatening, but also, it was okay when it was a problem he shared.
Right, so that was interesting. So because you can tell at the very start of the clip, I don't know if you noticed, but he was in the back washing his hands. So he really has OCD. So when it came to washing hands, like, oh, that's totally fine. What are you talking about? So sort of caricature. I just wanted to have fun with that a little bit, but I do want us to reflect on this whole idea of psychology and theology, and we can take a great thing and get it wrong. And tonight we're talking about love, and that's a great thing, but we can get it wrong. And so, just to reflect a little bit on where we're headed, even Freud, interestingly enough, got a few things wrong. He says that he claimed that religion is a form of neurotic illness. It stems from the unconscious mind. It results from incompletely repressed traumatic memories. The trauma is usually sexual. So if you have any kind of spiritual life, it's from some unresolved sexual trauma. Okay? Therefore, religion is an illusion resulting from sexual difficulties. Okay, and so this would actually be, and I'm not meaning to like jump on Freud, but just say he's like the father of modern psychology.
He had sexual problems, so
Well,
he viewed everything from the sexual angle.
So very good. So we're even seeing, we won't jump ahead too much in our like psychological depth here, but I would say, even in what you're saying, we could even say about Freud, the area that was not resolved in him is what he sort of took and projected onto everything he saw or what he might have picked out in people. Okay, so we want to keep that in mind. So even, now to his credit, he came up with defense mechanisms. One of them was called projection, ironic that he was projecting. But Jesus talked about projection. And so he said, why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye when you have a big old log coming out of your own? So we see that human nature can kind of get that wrong, unresolved in here makes me attack you. So just in this idea of even some foundations of some psychology can get it wrong, but then also we kind of want to be humbled just to say that is actually our artist rendering of the picture of God at certain points in our history. That one was in Western Europe. And so we could look at different theologies. We went from psychologies that were off, and that would cause a person just to say, stop it, and not realize that someone is suffering in front of them, thinking they're helping, but really they're just kind of nailing the coffin shut on that box that she was so afraid of. And we'd say that, in a way, maybe even worse, there could even be theologies that take what was meant to be getting love right, getting God right, and misused. And so we see even in a lot of Western theology, we see, and we can see it in art and architecture and all kinds of things through the Middle Ages and so on, where what started evolving was kind of an angry God concept. And so that fear of God then seeped into a lot of Protestant traditions to where, basically it's almost like the being buried in a box. If you want to avoid hell, you better come up right now. And so almost like some funky psychology within the funky theology. So I don't want us to say, oh, I'm on the right team. We're just going to get it right. I played for I buddies that are firefighters in the Livermore area, Pleasanton, Livermore, and I filled in as a sub, and so it was like this firefighter team, and they were playing a church team in softball, and so the church team was like the church team, all these Christian dudes, and it was hilarious because when the Christian team started losing, and I'm anonymous, they just think I'm some, whatever. But when the Christian team started losing, there's two things I noticed. They weren't very skilled softball players. And when their skills failed them, they found the F-bomb more than the firefighters did. And so just because you're on God's team doesn't make you a skilled person on that team. And when things start going south, it reveals where you're really coming from. Okay, so we're going to get a little bit of a premise on getting love right tonight. Next week, we're going to jump right into some really good skills, like the difference between blame and empathy and the role of listening. And so we're going to jump into a bunch of skills, but I want to make sure we build our foundation, and in a way that we have our own healthy psychology kind of in our mindset and healthy theology in our mindset. You've got a handout for the points we're covering tonight. You also have a folder with note paper for your own additional notes. I also want to mention about that notebook, and thank you, Matthew Judith, who put it all together for me, and Father Pete, all you guys have been doing great stuff on my behalf. Thank you. But even that notebook you have in your folder, reserve a little space in that notebook, not just for points that you hear, but things that matter to you that you're hearing. Things that you're going to start noticing, almost like somewhere in that little notebook inside your folder, it could be a little bit of a journal going, okay, in what way am I getting love right? In what way am I getting love wrong? So I want you to make that as personal as you can. Also, feel free to write your name in front of the folder, because they can look awfully alike to the person next to you, and they'll be reading your journal this time next week. So, so maybe write your name somewhere. Okay. So a couple of little readings here, if we're going to try to get love right, we're trying to get God right. Anybody know? Yeah, so Elder Thaddeus. He says something very interesting, and here we see we're starting to see where psychology and theology come together beautifully. Elder Thaddeus is almost like would be a psychology major of the saints, and he has a great way. Anybody know his famous book? Our Thoughts Determine Our Lives. Are you reading it right now? Right on. Is it working? Right? Yeah, so it's beautiful. And so what's interesting about Our Thoughts Determine Our Lives, that's the premise of what we know is cognitive behavioral therapy, which means how you think will scientifically determine how you feel. If you think something's going to turn out poorly, you will feel anxious or despairing.
And you won't do it right.
Right? And then your behavior will be off course. Okay, so he's that guy that writes about that. Really true stuff. He says, our starting point, I love this. So our starting point is always wrong. I love how, our starting point is always wrong. Instead of beginning with ourselves, we always want to change others first and ourselves last. If everyone would begin first with themselves, then there would be peace all around. What do you guys think of that? So that's healthy psychology. That's healthy theology. And so wherever love's going right or wrong for you, we just got reminded the focus we're going to have is, well, what's going on in here? Because if I don't fix it here, the tendency in marriage therapy, I've been doing marriage therapy for a lot of years, and it's a lot like ping pong or tennis. Like I'm in the room going, because what's common is there's a distinct belief that when the other person gets it right, we're going to be fine. So the tendency then, not following Elder Thaddeus' advice, is we so often want to start with the other person. Okay? Now, sometimes even our own psychology is, when my spouse gets it right, then I'll feel loved. We don't stop there. When my kids get it right, then I'll feel worthwhile. When my church gets it right, then I can really be close to God. When the government gets it right, then I'm not going to cheat on my taxes. Or whatever the thing might be, we keep going out there. Right? And guess what? We go further off center, further off center. So this whole series is called Life from the Heart. And so we're going to hopefully be coming toward the heart, toward the middle. This next little quote is nice also, St. Paisios. And he says, if you want to help the church, it is better to try to correct yourself rather than be looking to correct others. If you manage to correct yourself, one small part of the church is immediately corrected. Naturally, if everyone did the same, the body of the church would be in good health. But today, people concern themselves with anything but themselves. You see, judging others is easy, whereas working on yourself takes effort. What's your impression of that? Give me your feelings about that.
It's a hard truth.
You have hard truth?
It's a basic fact.
Okay, basic fact.
You can't change anyone but yourself.
Good. So
Unless they want to change.
right. What else? What other impressions do you have of that? Why do you like it? If you like it, why do you like it? It's freeing. What's that? Give you an example.
12-step program, the Al-Anon person who's not drinking, if they get their self together, often the alcoholic will follow, or they'll decide to leave if they need to, or survive it.
Right.
If the alcoholic gets clean and sober, the Al-Anon finds that their life doesn't necessarily
Right.
get better, it just changes.
So very often the person is focused out there somewhere, never, even when that gets better, they actually don't get better.
Yes, if
Right?
the problem's in you.
So, right. So what else? Any other impressions of this? Why you like it? Why it's important?
Instinctively recognize that he's speaking the truth.
Yes. It really resonates as truth, doesn't it? So definitely this would be, like in a way, we'd say you just got free therapy. Like getting love right, this is definitely foundational. Now, when you reflect on your life and your relationships, I want you to keep it in mind because certain things are going to come in mind and you probably encounter troubling situations with people with troubling personalities or whatever, and it's not always easy. And so I want us to keep this in mind because the temptation is going to be that we're going to spend all our energy, if we had a piece of binder paper and you wrote down everything, you fold it in half and you made 2 columns. And one column was everything that's in your control and everything that's out of your control. If we don't follow this, what usually happens is we put literally our emotional energy on the things we can't control. Like our kids' SAT scores, right? Or the way in which, you know, our spouse is behaving that day. Whatever that is, we put our emotional energy, and we don't have a lot of it. I mean, we only have so much of it. We put a lot of our emotional energy on what we can't control. That's in one column. And what ends up happening is we end up not having energy to control the things we can control. Right? And so we end up burnt out. And then when we start losing control of things like patience or our attitude or doing something healthy, we end up not having energy to do it. And then we fall into, well, I would have, but, and we keep then assigning responsibility for me not doing what's in my control on the person that burnt me out because I was focused on the person that's outside of my control. So this kind of thing is good for us. Okay. And then finally, in kind of way of introduction, St. Isaac, we know this one, I quote it in every speaking engagement. By the way, I quote St. Isaac in any speaking engagement I'm in. And I speak in Silicon Valley for big corporations and in public schools to hundreds of parents at a time. And if I have any parenting workshop, I quote this: to see ourselves as we really are is a miracle greater than raising the dead. And when we talk about and we'll talk about this in other workshops as well, but even when we think about who am I in my family unit, how do I show up to that? How do my kids experience me? We usually have our notion of what we think that looks like. And very often we discover, wow, here St. Isaac is saying, Orthodox spirituality is saying, that the idea that we even see ourselves in true light, like parting the Red Sea, no biggie. Raising the dead, no biggie. See yourself in true light as you really are, that's a biggie. So our pursuit together as a community, a connected community of people interested in the truth is going to connect itself like, wow, I really want to see the truth about myself. If I'm going to get love right, I want to see the truth about myself. So we're going to do some kind of reflecting on a couple things that way, hopefully reinforcing that. Now, this you might remember this. Anybody know what this is called from like Psych 101 in 7th grade? It's called Johari's window. Anyway, I want us to look at it, and if in your notes or whatever somewhere, you can even write it down because it's quite interesting. Basically 4 quadrants, and the idea where it says open, what that is on like self-awareness, what's known to me, something I know about myself, and something others know about me, that would be the green window there. That would be the open window that I have awareness of how I show up, of how I am, and other people can see that. That's the open part. Then we go down below in the blue, something that's known to me that's not known to other people. That's like the hidden window. Then we have what's not known to me. I love this one. What's not known to me. Catch that one? This is for sure. If anybody has any children over 10 years old, this square applies to you. Because they already see things about you that you're not seeing about you, let alone be married for 20, 30 years. So this is a very, what do you think about this window? So we're all represented in all these, but this one's quite interesting to me, and that is like, wow, there could be things I'm not even aware about myself that is like painfully obvious to other people. Like, I think I'm a really good driver. In my self-delusion, I am really good. What's known to my wife is different than that. And it actually has to do with, like, I wouldn't consider myself an angry person. Like, I wouldn't say, oh, I have anger issues. But if you entered that window with my wife on various occasions when I've been driving, so I wouldn't call it anger. I'm calling it like I'm living out my human rights. I'm having a voice on the freeway, right? But what she'd be aware of is like a whole different angle on that to go, wow, he could be a maniac under the right conditions or wrong conditions. So that would be very interesting, like, wow, okay, I'm going to be somewhere in all four of these. What is it that I'm not aware of? I mean, Socrates, what did he say? Know thyself. And he wasn't talking about just 1/4 of our life. The more we know ourselves, what we know about ourselves is what others see. What others see is what is known to me. What others see, I'm going to have that same awareness. Or we go to the red square window, and we could say in our awareness, there could be areas of life that certainly isn't known by others and we're not even aware of. So I just wanted to put that up there when we're talking about St. Isaac and seeing ourselves as we really are, as a miracle greater than raising the dead, that this idea of awareness, like, what am I aware of? I want to be aware of more. And I don't know if you ever have mirrors in your house where you get this other angle of yourself. It can be scary sometimes. I never see myself from that angle. So our personalities can be the same way. Okay? So this idea of awareness, and I would say, again, going on with St. Isaac, one of the beautiful miracles of seeing ourselves in true light, in a way, it's proof that we're interested in the truth. We want to know a lot about psychology truth and theology truth, and it's very interesting. But to really want to know the truth about ourselves is proof we're really interested in truth. Because knowing the truth about ourselves sometimes can be uncomfortable, or even challenging, or even painful. So I want us to kind of, if we're going to be getting love right, we're moving toward, turn the lights on, I want to see. Okay? All right. So I want us to, and let me just check on time. So I want to say that if I had to, and I really believe this, and I don't know how many experts in sports psychology, but if I had to compare anything that is most similar to Orthodox spirituality, and there's a lot of different Christian traditions out there, and they're kind of different. Some similarities and some distinct differences. A distinctive of what I understand about Orthodox spirituality and ethos and point of view and so on, is that to me it is like identical to what I understand about sports psychology. Now, what do we understand about sports psychology? So we've heard that there's such a thing as sports psychology, and we even know that like some pro athletes need to see the sports psychologist. Tell me a little bit about when does a pro athlete go see a sports psychologist?
I mean, through their threshold.
Yeah, so they reach some stuck point. Okay, what else do we know when they reach that stuck point? What's going on? What else do you know, or what do you think's going on with that athlete when they're stuck?
They get angry.
Okay, self-doubt. What else?
It's a result and not a cause.
Okay, result, if not a cause. What else? Mommy issues. There you go. Okay, the expert over there. Okay, they're not succeeding, so something's not working. Something is broken down. Now, do they see a sports psychologist with a pulled ligament? No. Or a torn ACL or any of that? No. So is their body stuck? No, they don't see a sports psychologist with their body stuck. What's stuck? Their head is stuck. Okay, so the premise of sports psychology is they are from head to toe equipped. They have experience, body, muscle, muscle memory, all of it, and yet, oops, what happens? Well, the expression often used in sports psychology is, and sometimes even fans will say, uh-oh, they got in their head. When an athlete gets in their head, things change drastically. So what are some of the characteristics in sports psychology of when we get in our head? By the way, if we're looking for a good Greek word, it would, and from that is central to how we understand our view of humankind as taught by the Orthodox Church, is the word logismi, where we get the word logic. Okay? And so the church teaches that we have two operating systems, just like sports psychology does, head and heart. So whether the fathers are talking about, oops, be careful at logismi, be careful when you get in your head, or the sports psychologist is saying to this stacked athlete who has everything going for him, and he's stuck and can't do a darn thing, and he's just ready to give up. Why? Oops, stuck in his head. What are those characteristics in sports psychology and in getting in our head? So very often, and we can add to this list as much as you want, but definitely overthinking. Have you ever been in a state of overthinking? Does anybody have any teenagers? Teenage 101 is, that's a population of overthinkers. And we'll talk about that maybe when we have time at various times. But we're in a time when overthinking is becoming lethal. It's becoming deadly. In fact, interesting, if the latest edition of People magazine, check it out. But on this little part, it has this little thing on the front cover where it says something about social anxiety. And it's a whole three-page spread. So I work in Pleasanton, California. My private practice is there right near Foothill High. And many months ago, less than a year, the dad of that family who was head of the athletic boosters was at the booster meeting with all the parents, who were the parents of all the jocks. And it was this big meeting, and their youngest boy was a freshman who was at home working on his homework. And tragically, he committed suicide while the parents were at the meeting. And that story, that family's picture, and their interview is in People magazine. And that this boy had a social anxiety because he overthought everything, and he's a freshman already worried about what college he's getting into. That's overthinking, that's going on, it's life and death, and what overthinking leads to. But an example of an equipped young man, just like an athlete would have everything he needs, but got stuck in the head. When we get in our head, what are the characteristics? If we're going to get love right, I want us to know the characteristics of when we get love wrong and when we get in our head. Okay? So we have overthinking, obsessing. We know that word obsessing. So obsessive compulsive. Compulsive is repeated actions, repeated behaviors. Obsessing is repeated thoughts. We keep thinking. Over-focusing, it becomes huge to us. Very often when we're in our head, super true about sports psychology, is we focus on outcome. So that great baseball player is in the batter's box, he knows how to do it all, he can hit that ball, he can hit any kind of pitch. But when this started thinking, what if I get out? What if my average goes down? What if the fans don't like this? What's going to happen? Am I going to make the All-Star team? As soon as he leaves the present moment into thinking about outcome, his body chemistry changes, his body changes, his brain chemistry changes because he left the present moment and he's worried about something. And even though he doesn't notice necessarily because it happens in a split second, as soon as you think about outcome, what time zone are you in? Future. And no athlete performs well in the future. No marriage performs well in the future. No kid taking a test performs well if they're worried about the outcome. So when we're in our head, we are in the future. And when we're in the future, if you have to pick one emotional symptom that's true about being in the future, what is it?
Fear.
Anxiety. And so this is very true for us, okay? When we're in our head, very characteristic, the next one, when our worthiness is determined by performance. So that's why we're so worried about outcome, because not only do we want to have a good outcome, but we've linked how we feel about ourselves. Basically, who I am is totally determined by how that turns out. So no wonder they're stressed out, or no wonder we're stressed out, right? So this is what happens when we're in our head. We're in the past or in the future. So if in the future it brings up anxiety, in our head we can also be in the past. What kind of emotions go with the past? Depression, guilt, regret. I mean, just even like shame and regret, like yuck. I mean, just to say the words, we could feel like, oh my, it's like quick drying cement, like glue. I just ate glue, like like. And in the past, there is no solution in the past, and there is no solution in the future. So we're really kind of realizing, wow, we just went into time. When we're in our head, we went into time zones where we are powerless. No wonder we get all worked up. Okay? And the other thing, and the church fathers talk a lot about this with the lois me, being in our head, and they really warn us about being in our head too much. And one of the things the church fathers teach us, and it's certainly true in any kind of psychology as well on the same topic, and that is when you're in your head, a remarkable skill comes over you. You have 20/20 vision on the defects of other people. And all those defects keep happening. Now, if you've had kids for long enough and you didn't know you got into your head, you start noticing your kids' defects. And your kids will know that you notice their defect before you notice them. And they'll know it. If you've been married for some years now, who's married over 10 years? Beautiful, so you qualify. Under 10 years? Oh, you're the happy looking ones. Okay, cool. I'm sorry, no, but so, you know, and I've said this before here, but, you know, in the first 10 years, you can have, like, opposites attract. Like, that's perfect because I don't do that and you do. This is such a good fit. Okay, 10 years, okay, and it goes from opposites attract to opposites attack. Why? Because we get in our head, we feel some disappointments, they're not turning out exactly the way we envisioned it. We put our focus on them and not us. And what happens? Judgmental and negative. And then we literally we're haunted by the fact that their defects keep showing up. And at some point, our spouses start feeling or experiencing that we see their defects first before we see the person. Okay, that point, and so like next month, we're talking about family dynamics. We're going to have a blast with that. Then the final month, we'll be talking about marriage. So we're going to develop this point even more. This is the big deal on seeing defects instead of the person. It's the root of why people have affairs. They encounter someone they feel seen by. That's personal. And that's exhilarating. Because it is. And they didn't realize that they felt like they lost a little bit of like, I don't feel like I'm seen as a person. Every time we see each other, I hear what I'm doing wrong, all this kind of stuff. Right? So we're going to keep that in mind. Okay? So that's life in the head. So, and I don't have time to develop this, so I'm going to just comment on it. If we had time, what I want us to think about, and maybe footnote it in your notes, you know what? I would love to give you homework. And it's on this point. So what goes wrong? You know, living life in the head, or we could say living life without the inner life. We skip over our heart. I want us to reflect on what happens in our parenting life when we're in our head. What happens in our kids' life when they're in their head? Yeah, stop it, Renee. Stop it. That's true. We go back to our therapy session, we saw on the screen. Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! That's beautiful. I love it. You know, and that's a perfect fit, right? What happens in our personal life when we're in our head? What happens in our relationships when we're in our head? What happens to church life? If you're a churchgoer and you're in your head, woo-wee. That's its own thing. So I want us to think about this, like just as a for instance. I am going to check back next week on the homework part, so I want to hear from you next week. But just as a for instance, we kind of touched on the married part when we talked about we're going to start seeing their defects, right? And that would be true in married life. Is we're going to have a lot more argumentativeness because they keep showing up with their defects. And because we didn't listen to St. Paisios or Elder Thaddeus, and we think it's our calling to focus on them. It's a ministry to correct them. No, but it's really funny because you mentioned codependency. That's the codependent way. And if you're codependent and Christian, then you take it on as your personal crusade, your personal ministry. Right? You know what? We can circle around Father, and we can make this a therapy session right now. Is there something you guys want to talk about? I love it. Okay, so I want us to think about it because distinctly, like all the characters are the same, but when we're in our head, there's this shift. Okay, so that's an example. We touched on kids' life when they're in their head. Definitely this idea of they define themselves by their performance, so they're scared to death, and they literally have this sentiment: I'm not good enough. Period. That's the, like across the board, 99% of young people believe that. And it's characteristic of them being in their head and they don't know how to get out of their head. This is why they're smoking so much weed. I mean, it's more legal, more accessible, all that kind of stuff. But I'm telling you, the partying that's going on is more for emotional reasons than social reasons. Because they can't shut it off up there. And they feel all the pressure. So that's why we don't even judge them. We're sympathetic to that. But we want to understand what's going on in their inner life. Okay, so give some thought to those areas. I want to hear about that next week. Okay. So just to review, now we get back into sports psychology and we get in our heart. Now in sports psychology, they talk about the zone. And sports psychologists help them get in the zone. And then usually and it's so interesting because the church has like certain rhythms and rituals. So does sports psychology. So sports, if you ever notice in baseball, the guy will take his bat, twirl it a few times, touch they have rhyme and reason what they're doing because they're blocking out all the stress. It's just them and the plate, and then they see a guy on the mound, and they go, I'm in my zone, I just want to see the ball. I can smell the grass, they get the joy of the game back, they're in the present moment. I get to connect with that ball. I get to do that, can't wait to do it. Because they're in their heart, they're in the present moment. They're able to believe being present with that moment makes all that possible. Okay? So that's life in the heart. Able to access joy, ability to look at the bigger picture. So if that same baseball player gets out 2/3 of the time, if he looks at the bigger picture, he's batting .333, which is a great batting average. If we only look and obsess on the thing that didn't go right, we go south. We look at the bigger picture. Focuses on the positive, lives in the present moment. And then we say, again, sports psychology, Orthodox spirituality is connected to their inner life. They have this little relationship going on in here. And we'd say life in the heart, and this is definitely distinct to getting love right. When we have the ability, so this idea of being in the heart, when we have the ability to be connected to our inner life, we are now qualified to connect with someone else's inner life. And I think the opposite is true. If I'm blocked in my inner life, my connection with you has to be done in a bunch of different ways, but it won't be heart to heart. Right? Even I'm taking yoga 12, I've counted 12 times. You can see I have a yoga body. I mean, it's just like kind of a natural, the 6-foot lawns in there. They're so jealous of me. So, but I get a lot out of it the 12 times I've gone because, it's amazing stretching and all that kind of stuff, right? But I remember this one instructor kind of said the classic, namaste, which I love that. Reminded me of being at a sushi bar. They always say something like that on my way to a sushi bar. And, but it's not the same meaning. I think the other one's thank you for buying my sushi, but anyway, that's, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what that means, yeah. And, but namaste, there's a few different translations, but basically it means the light in me bears witness to the light in you. That is so beautifully Orthodox. The inner life in me bears witness to the inner life in you. The Spirit of God in me bears witness to the Spirit of God in you. So this is kind of the idea of being in the heart leads to connection, it leads to community, because we have our hearts sort of in common. So that's life in the heart. Now, with my remaining minutes, I want to talk about our human story and how we've kind of been relegated to do love outside of paradise. And we see, and this is Rembrandt, I think Rembrandt? Michelangelo, thank you. Michelangelo, I have a prodigal son that was Rembrandt. Michelangelo, and you can see the serpent, climbing up the tree, deceiving Adam and Eve. And I want us to reflect on this, and I want to say a couple things here. From the first family, they were tricked sort of out of their heart. And they were promised that they could be like God. It's a real tricky thing. They could be like God without God. And remember before I was talking about being in the world, not of the world? The way of the world is you could be like God without God. And so they went from the source of life to a different source of life, which was that other tree. They tried to get life from a source that doesn't offer real life.
Except through God who created the tree.
Right.
So they're still worshiping God and they don't know it.
Well, they didn't know a lot of things at that point. And so one of the things they didn't know is that they were in paradise and they didn't have to think of option B. But so I want to mention a couple things before we close. This idea, I want to mention a couple words. I think it's in your notes. Worship, worthiness, and addiction. Trying to be like God without God. In paradise, the first family, humankind, was meant to worship God. The word for worship is where we get the word worthiness. God is worthy. All glory goes to God. We get our worthiness from God. We worship God because all value comes from Him. When they lost paradise and had to do life outside of paradise, it mixed up their sense of worthiness. So, what I want us to look at just in a few moments here, I'm going to go back to this little drawing here, is that we get plopped on the planet, as our kids do, with a little pulsating heartbeat, what I call a value question. And we're just dying to know the answer. It's pulsating even now from the time we're born of who am I and what am I worth? Who am I as self-identity? What am I worth is self-esteem. And however we interact with life and how life interacts with us, it gives answers, not always good answers. Now, next month, we're going to be going into unpacking our family dynamics so we really can get clarity on in my life story, how was that value question answered? Or in some ways, how was it not answered properly? So the point I want to make is this. If I could draw it this way. Life outside of paradise ended up getting tricked that all the value that would have answered that is not found there. As I mentioned about youth culture today, it's pretty well established that most young people don't believe that their value is found within themselves. many of us, if we kind of reflect on various parts of life and when we feel insecure and when certain things haven't gone right, very often when it really gets down to it, we have some struggle to believe that what's in there is good enough. Our worthiness has been messed with for a whole variety of reasons. We'll unpack that in future weeks. What I want to talk about in terms of life in the heart, getting love right, being a family that's meant to sort of operate in paradise, except we live outside of paradise. When that value or that worthiness is not believed, or we don't know how to find it in here, and we don't have a sense of, often it's not modeled very clearly, that life in the heart is a place that's supposed to be the destination we go into and understand and live and be and connect with other people. What's super common is worthiness isn't found here, value isn't found here. If it's not here, it must be here. So, if you are a hardworking person, many men, epidemically sort of, and sociologically, have been known to find their worth where? At work. And so, what do you know? We like to work hard, no crime in that, but when you find your value and your worthiness in something outside of here, and in this case in work, guess what kind of word we use here? Workaholic. What's a workaholic? Workaholic is, it's never enough. Workaholic is, oh, that was fine, except I got a 10 out of 10, except in one area of my review, and I had a panic attack, because I'm sure I'm going to get fired. Why? Because life and death worthiness is based on my performance. What does that turn into? Okay, so we can maybe not have boundaries because we want to make sure they're liking us. What else?
We expect too much of them.
Okay, so we need them to be rock stars. They better get it right, because how they turn out is a reflection of our own worthiness. So then we might get controlling. We might, yes, they can't be their own person. They need to be an extension of us. And so the helicopter parenting comes into play. I will hover until you get it right. And if you don't get it right, I'm going to be doing it for you anyway. Okay? Okay, yeah. What else might be out here if we're not finding value within ourselves? Okay, social. So sometimes the whole social pressures of, in crowd, this kind of thing. What else?
Our possessions.
Okay, yeah. So we can even say possessions and things. The more things I have, the more worth I have. Yep.
Unfortunately, and I've run into this online, people who, their self-worth is in putting others down or being hurtful.
Okay, so worthiness is okay. We could say put downs of others makes them go up. Okay. Now we haven't even mentioned sex, so we got to loosen this crowd up a little bit.
We're out of time.
Okay, yeah. All right. Which actually we are. So I need to land the plane anyway. But so this is where we gotta recognize that that there's no crime in wanting to feel worthy. And when we find that the world we live in and all the kind of knocks and bruises we've taken knocks us out of our heart and into our head, which means we're likely chasing after something at the end of that arrow that gives us some amount of sense of I feel okay, value, I feel alive. Now, that picture with all those arrows is the premise of what we understand addiction to be. So, now what we didn't mention is the obvious is alcohol and substance. If that's obvious. But I'm glad we didn't have to mention the obvious one, but we know that whenever we try to solve an inside problem with an outside thing, that's addiction. But I'm glad we didn't jump right on substance because that's so obvious. I want us to recognize that it's people-pleasing and that it's shopping and that it's eating and that it's making sure we have perfect kids and making sure we control everything around us. I want us to recognize that if our well-being is out there, we're going to either be in despair or horrifically controlling. And we won't get love right. So, we need to wrap it up. So our journey is life from the heart. That's our journey back home. In March, we'll take a break, or in April, March and April, right? For our Lent and our journey back home. So we're getting a little bit of a jump start on even understanding how significant that Lenten journey can be, because it really is the journey back to our heart. And that's exactly what we're beginning to talk about tonight and next week and in the future weeks. Okay? In a couple of weeks, then you guys are even going to work within small groups on if we're going to be a community in St. Basil that's a community from the heart. How do we behave? What kind of groups do we have? How do we reach out to the larger community? We'll be working on that in a couple of weeks. Because it's not just about me and mine, it's about our calling to be a community from the heart. What do we start noticing when we're in our heart, right? Okay, so yeah, we're right there. Is it making sense so far? Yeah. Okay, now remember that little note, the little notes, the pad you have inside? Make sure that you note anything. So next week, I'm going to ask what you did with your homework, which was the life in the head in all those areas. And then the other thing I'm going to ask you at the start, and what you're going to write in your little notebook at some point, hopefully sooner than later so you don't forget, is I do want to hear from you next week in the first 5 minutes, 10 minutes, on what stood out to you tonight that applies to you. Because remember that good old thing about what Elder Thaddeus said and St. Paisios? We're going to really get our muscle memory on reflecting on what's going on with me. What am I working on? What stood out? How did God speak? Or what was interesting and what applies maybe to my world or whatever. I want to hear that from you next week. Okay? I have to say too, because you have to give glory to God for many things. This PowerPoint was not going to work because the system wasn't going into our Macs and all that. And literally we were lamenting and we had to do prayers because sometimes the attacks from the enemy comes in creative ways. And so I give glory to God, and Matt ran home, got his PC, whatever. But I give glory to God though that we could even have fun tonight and have a PowerPoint because it almost didn't happen. So I give God glory for that. Also, I loved coming here tonight. I've been anticipating it, looking forward to seeing you guys. And then just to be in church and hear Father say how our faith is a love story. See, that's getting love right. And so in our faith, in our life, we're really interested in helping each other get love right. So let's do that with one another. Okay, with that, I'll close and say thank you for your good attention. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. And again, please spread the word. Share with others that come next week. And if you didn't get a chance to sign in, please do so we can get everyone's, just to get an idea of who's coming. And if you want more information, we can respond to you. God bless you all. Have a wonderful evening. We'll see you soon.